Hi there, I'm Dr. Rich Simmons, and we're standing here on the top of the Carbon Neutral Energy Solutions Lab at Georgia Tech, amidst a solar array here, and collecting sun and energy right now. And the purpose of this video is to provide an overview of energy generation in the Southeast region. We'll give you a quick overview of global and U.S. energy context, which will include a little review of sources of energy, major trends, and types of electricity. First of all, at a very high level, there are many drivers that influence our decisions and use of energy today. These include a constrained supply of conventional fossil fuel materials. It also includes implications of population growth and how to serve the needs of a growing world and provide higher levels of service from our energy resources. And then finally, there's a very important part, environmental impacts that result from our use and generation of energy. So we'll think about these three as framing the global picture, and then we'll talk about this now in terms of how the U.S. is supplying electricity today. In terms of the global picture, still nearly 80% of the world's energy is coming from a fossil fuel resource. That number has changed a bit in recent years with the advent of new additions of solar and wind, as well as geothermal and bioenergy resources, among some others. Hydropower still accounts for a large majority of the renewables in the world. There's also a fairly big piece from global resources coming from traditional biomass in some of the developing countries. In terms of the US picture, we see that in 2015, coal used to be the predominant resource for electricity, and in 2015, natural gas displaced coal as the largest single source of fuel from which we derive our electricity. And then among the others, we see substantial share from nuclear and hydropower, and then the other single-digit percentage renewables. A big story in the United States lately has been the advent of new policies to encourage the adoption of renewables. This is again spurred by the incentive to want to limit the use of fossil fuels, to reduce the environmental impacts of their use, and then to get to a more sustainable long-term future for energy. The biggest stories here are in wind and solar, whereas in the last decade or so, wind has grown by a factor of 10 times in the United States markets. And if you look back toward the early 2000s, solar has climbed actually at 100 times of those initial rates. And even though the percentages are still in the single digits overall, that is a tremendous disruptive change to our electricity profile. Now we'd like to review energy in context a little bit and discuss electricity rates. So what we can do in a given region of the US is largely affected by what the current prevailing prices that we pay for that electricity are. And so we see that in the Southeast in general, we have lower than national average rates. We also know that in areas like the Southwest and the Northeast, the prevailing rates are quite a bit higher, sometimes as much as 50% higher in terms of what retail households or businesses pay for their electricity use. In the islands like Hawaii or in the territories like Puerto Rico, those rates might even be higher. We will talk more about electricity prices in a future module, but for now it is an important consideration because it can affect how competitive or uncompetitive a given resource is compared to its other potential alternatives. This map of the United States provides a really nice high-level view to compare the different states in terms of their electricity matrix. It shows in the wedges of the pie which predominant resources provide the electricity supply in those given states. And then as well, the shade of the state in the background of the pie suggests the carbon intensity or relative carbon intensity, or how much CO2 is produced per unit of energy for those states. So for example, you'll see that in the Northwest region, the shade is a much lighter one. In the Midwest, in the Ohio Valley, there's a predominant amount of coal and therefore a much more carbon intense grid. And here we have a little microcosm of the two ends of the energy spectrum. Coal cars on one hand and solar modules on the other. A totally perfect paradigm for how we would like to envision a renewable future, but understanding and building on the fossil fuel resources that have powered our economy and made it productive. And now a matter of balancing these in the future, working toward lower carbon, and understanding how we leverage all of the above is really our challenge.